It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. We mention all of those as we usually do because, well, remind you all where we are available. If one works better for you or not, you have really dealer's choice at that point, but make it available in order to, so you can do the interaction, you can see what we're doing, got going on, see the video, and of course comment on it, because that's one of the better ways you can get at the show throughout the program. Again, if you can do so safely. No wheel between the knees while texting kind of thing. Will not be any part of that. But if you can do so safely, please do. But also, if you want to call a little bit later in the show, do it the phone call, hands-free there as well. Again, do not send your tickets to me because I'm not taking them. Point is that we'll also have those phone calls going on for those of you preferring that way. But all the ways we try to make it available for you all is we have Calvin Williams chiming in. Good afternoon to you as well over on the Facebook. You're locked in and loaded for what is going to be, it's just accelerating here, isn't it? Got a lot more going on. First day of early voting. Yeah, I know I didn't quite start out the show. And Flaco Jimenez, congrats there to going out and doing the thing, going out and voting. Celebratory bell there for you. There's one. And hopefully that means an angel voter gets his way. I don't know. That might be stretching things. In any case, also Austin Redfern chiming in. Thank you. Hello to you as well. So, yeah, first day of early voting. Didn't make it to the polls myself yet. It's been a very busy day because it's almost like once things start happening with voting, among other things, it's like people also then continue and start responding to more things. We got a lot more coverage we're working on for you. Of course, a whole slate of candidates. Again, by best estimation, anyway, the ones that I reasonably thought we could get on the program anyway. Like, sure, yeah, I would love to have all of the governors in our, even like that I could drive to practically on the show, but failing that, we're definitely been focusing on the congressional representation, state representation, city council, other races. So again, candidates who've been looking for us, make sure to check your emails. We keep sending them out and sending out more things. We also have Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, and Eric von Holstein-Rathwell join us over on the social media. Hello, and various hand signs to all of you as well. A lot of stuff to get into today because, yeah, early voting. It's going on. It has begun. No clear idea what the totals are just yet. Hopefully we'll have more on that for you tomorrow, locally anyway, at least what the turnout has looked like, and that'll kind of set a trajectory for how we then go through Election Day. Conventional wisdom has been, and whether this is still conventional or wise at all, who knows? Again, we'll look at the data to actually bear that out, is that the entirety of early voting, all 2 weeks, we've got of it here, will be more or less doubled by Election Day. So that's why, even though we won't see results, the actual, like, who's getting voted on or who is looking in favor of by even the end of early voting, that won't come out till Election Day. And even after the polls close on Election Day, of course, still, it's informative in its own way, and will probably just have me ramp up my harping of getting to make sure to actually go out and vote. Kevin Williams asking, what are we going for the election? 6 or 7% turnout? Oh, that hurts me, and yet it hurts because it's true. I have no real expectation so far. Again, we'll see where we're at. I think I'm letting hope, or at least unfounded optimism, hopefully not unfounded optimism, break through here. But I'm calling for, or at least strongly hoping for, what I always hope for, which is at least double digits. Come on, I know we can do that. I think we can do that. I really hope we can do that. So that's yeah. RJ saying voting next day or two, kind of it was a little bit messy in the morning, and particularly my neck of the woods as well. So it was a little bit not favorable conditions to get out. Understandable. It's the brilliant thing. There's 2 weeks of it. So just make sure to vote early and vote often. And in this case, I'm referring to the fact that there might be runoffs in some of these races. But getting more into that, John Browslin saying, voted today also, so you get the bell as well. Thank you for voting. Unfortunately, Beto's landslide victory in El Paso County is going to come up one vote short. Okay, that's a weird bit of combination pessimism and optimism. I don't know. I guess, hey, if it works for you, more power to you. But thank you again for going out and vote. And Maria Coleman saying going out to vote against the bonds, among other issues. Again, the number of those, even just within El Paso County, some of the ones that we haven't necessarily mentioned exactly. I want to say that there's at least a couple in the Land of Enchantment, that part of our office or our audience, and a couple of different offices, actually. I think both, what is it? I think there was one in Sunland Park and one in actually Las Cruces proper, Doña Ana County in any case. So there's a lot of public money on this ballot, folks. So got good reasons there. Flucky Jimenez saying voted at Marty Robbins Park, and there was a steady turnout. Enthusing in its own way, in its own right, though. Hopefully that can be maintained and continued on here. Sometimes of the times when people recognize me of the poll workers here, or I'll just ask them anyway, saying like, how's it been today? How's it been looking? And hoping that they're not giving me a depressed answer at the very least, because oftentimes, I mean, God bless them, the people willing to go out and actually sit there and, grease the wheels of the democratic process that this is. Again, a lot of credit to be given to them. And if they just look kind of like bored out of their minds, I just got to think to myself, oh no, this probably hasn't been a lot of voting going on out there. Because yeah, if nothing's going on, I mean, you kind of have to be ready, Johnny on the spot, so to speak, ready to accept the voters. But if you're just got to be ready and no one's actually coming, I could see that being mind numbing. So again, appreciate the people who are willing to take that on, and hopefully it won't be a boring season for you. And yeah, RJ saying shooting for 10% is truly sad, but hey, maybe the potential for an attack will get people to the polls. Talking about international events, let's hope it doesn't go there. But again, baby steps. I will accept progress on vote totals, and hopefully it doesn't take an international catastrophe to do that here. And Angel Rueda saying, did y'all vote today? Miserable weather was perfect. 0 wait time at the West Side YWCA. So thank you for voting there as well. I mean, I've voted there sometimes as well. Sometimes at, the whole advent of the whole election vote centers where you can go and vote anywhere, early voting, which I appreciate. As well as have Ida Beza Gardner chiming in over there, as well as Ed Clore saying, if anyone saw the voter guide online, they'll notice the Democrats conveniently have all the information and the Republicans did not respond. Didn't see the one you're exactly talking about. If you're talking about, I know there's a few different ones out there. I think El Paso Times has one. El Paso Matters has one. El Paso Inc. has one. All of the El Paso ones have it. Except for us, really. Should we have a voter guide, guys? No, we're not. We're not going to do a voter guide. We're just going to interview the candidates as we do. And speaking of which, today we are going to be having on another one of our congressional representation, the incumbent for the New Mexico 2nd Congressional District, Republican Yvette Harrell, running for her next term of office and re-election therein, getting into both her platform and some of the major issues that y'all have brought up with that. So again, that is our guest on here today. Spoke with her a little bit earlier today by phone. Again, pretty much all of our interviews during this election season be happening on a pre-recorded basis because schedules be crazy, y'all, particularly since we're in early voting now. So the campaign season is continuing to heat up till it reaches that fever and hopefully not busting the top off the pressure cooker fever pitch. But, well, again, we're going to keep our eye on it. So that's actually going to take us through that first break of the hour here right now. There are a couple other things I want to talk about a little bit later on, even if elections is... it's going to dominate. That's listen to this for anything more than 5 minutes. Y'all know that we're going to be doing it again, leading up to our election night coverage, among other things. So stay tuned for that and a whole lot more. Got to take that first break of this hour. Again, coming out of this break, talking with Yvette Harrell, a Republican representing the New Mexico 2nd Congressional District, and of course those issues therein. But other issues coming up today, at least the ones that I mentioned in the announcement post that I want to make sure we at least mention today, including, of course, some things that are coming out from the, technically a position up for re-election, but not in the election sense of what the Texas Attorney General is responding to the local DA in reference to the August 3rd case. So that and a whole lot more. Okay, Ed Clore clarifying he was talking about the El Paso Matters voter guide. So I know there's a bunch out there. Be informed, and we'll do our own part in doing so. But stay tuned for more after this break. Again, got to take that one and coming back with our guests. All that and more here on Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Keep those comments going. We'll pop them up during the interview, but of course, the relevant ones, and then keeping going into them. All that and more after this break. Stay tuned. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690. No delays on your El Paso freeways right now. Looking pretty good. Crash free. A stalled truck's blocking the right lane on Gateway South at Trans Mountain. On Gateway South at Fred Wilson, it's a big rig that's blocking the right shoulder. An accident with police on the scene. North Loop Drive eastbound at Delta. And an injury accident Piedras at Pershing Drive. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
News Radio 690, KTSM, and Scott Heating and Cooling want to provide a local veteran with a heating and cooling system upgrade. Tell us about a deserving veteran you know who would benefit from a free new refrigerated AC unit. Who are they? How have they positively impacted you, their families, and the community? Nominate a veteran you know today at ktsmradio.com.
This report is sponsored by Audible. This fall, find everything you love listening to on Audible. From memoirs and true crime to celebrities and sci-fi, Audible is the home of storytelling, audiobooks, podcasts, and originals. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com.
You wash your hands, you brush your teeth, but what about the nose? How do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, flushing out allergens, mucus, and germs. And it's why cleaning your nose, the body's air filter, is the next evolution in daily personal hygiene. People try Navage for lots of reasons. Sinusitis, colds, allergies, snoring, things that make it hard to breathe through your nose. But over time, they find that cleaning their nose makes them feel better, a lot better. Over 3 million Navage users have written more than 100,000 reviews, averaging 4.7 stars, saying, best product I've ever used, and amazing, I love my Navage. Navage helps you breathe better, sleep deeper, and snore less, but the biggest payoff is improved health. Navage is good personal hygiene and can help you stay healthier. At Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Target, and online. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E. Clean nose, healthy life.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know how important it is to be confident in all of life's close-up moments.
And bad breath can rob you of your confidence.
Yeah, it can. Whenever I'm rubbing elbows with celebrities or friends or just chilling at home, I got to make sure I have the confidence that comes with Smart Mouth mouthwash.
Smart Mouth is clinically proven to eliminate and prevent bad breath for 24 hours with just 2 rinses a day.
Get to your favorite retailer right now for that kind of better together confidence.
Find Smart Mouth at your favorite retailer or at smartmouth.com/radio.
Hey, listener. Welcome to Limu's Karaoke Lounge, where Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need, and the music never stops. Hit it.
There's an emu with a full-time job. His partner's Doug, but Limu's the heartthrob. Grubs and worms, that's what Limu eats. Gotta fuel up to save you money and hit the streets.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show, including over on the social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. A lot of comments coming in there so far, including Maria Coleman, again, very appropriate for the start of early voting, which is ironically enough today, saying, please read the background and platform of each Canutillo Independent School District School Board candidates. Appears to be only one candidate not in favor of the multi-million proposed bond, referring there to the 200 some odd, I forget the exact tens of millions of dollars. Yeah, forget $10 million here or there. What's that among friends, right? I will admit that in a lot of our focus, as much as we have done entire focus on not county commissioners, we are focused on county commissioners. We have done entire focus on school board races before. This one, not as much of a focus at this point. See what we can bring y'all. There's a lot of candidates on there. Speaking of El Paso Matters, actually, from their homepage, what is it? 10 candidates vie for 3 Canutillo school board seats. So another one of those crowded sets of races. Going to do our best and try to bring you complete coverage of each individual race as opposed to like scattershotting for like a bunch of different ones. Kind of our process here, because knowing who is on what, and as opposed to just hey, here's this random dude that you'll never hear about this race again kind of thing. Yeah, not really what we're interested in. But so to that end, on some of the big races that we have been focusing on, of course, we have 3 congressional seats that are, well, really within our coverage area here on 690 AM. We have, of course, the Texas 16th Congressional District. It's quite a lot of words said about that one. We also have the Texas 23rd Congressional District, including an increasing amount of the eastern parts of El Paso County, including the entire eastern border of El Paso County. But also, we are more or less expanding our coverage than we have previously into southern New Mexico and talking about some of those races, specifically the New Mexico 2nd Congressional District, the one that is currently held by Republican Yvette Harrell. Got the chance to speak with her a little bit earlier today, talking about, again, some of the important issues, some of the things going on then that, well, are a part of her platform, as well as things that you all have brought up. So here is that interview. Enjoy. Joining me now, we have Yvette Harrell, Republican incumbent representing the New Mexico 2nd Congressional District. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Andrew.
Yes, thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show so we can talk about some of the things involving, of course, the campaign and the impending election, as there has been quite a lot of focus in these days. Of course, expanding our focus into southern New Mexico, not that it's ever been ignored, but explicitly and focusing on this race, among other things, for those that may have not been familiar with it, or the unfortunate people that may not realize that there is a race going on here. Introduce yourself and some of the major platform positions and the record that you're running on to be reelected for Congress.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm Yvette Harrell, and like you say, I represent the 2nd Congressional District in New Mexico, which actually is one of the largest districts in the nation that's not an individual state. So it goes from the Texas border all the way to the Arizona border, and of course encompasses all of the southern border. And for me personally, it's been about putting the voices of the people first. Even as a state representative, it's always people over politics. But right now, I'm really focused on the economy, the crime rate we're seeing in our state, and of course the open border. That's been something I've really pushed back on, and can't be in New Mexico without talking about the importance of our energy sector and that space and the jobs connected to it.
Absolutely. So then on the economy portion of what you're referring to there, of course, the economy has been coming up as one of the probably major factors in vote determinations in this impending midterm election. So what policies, procedures, or otherwise things that you would want to see done in the next term of office are you putting forth on your platform?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing we have to do, Andrew, is stop this out of control spending. And I think what a lot of people, a lot of Americans do not realize is that Congress under this administration, we have spent over $10 trillion as to what the Congressional Budget Office expected or thought we should spend, meaning that's over what the budgeted amount should have been for these various departments. And that's what's causing this inflation, this 40-year record high, cost of living. And we're all feeling it in our pocketbooks. And the really scary thing to me is looking at our 401k plans. I mean, do you realize that every single investor has been touched by that, and they're saying the average investor has lost up to $30,000 just since January. This is frightening, especially for those who are looking to retire, expecting those dollars to be there that they, obviously put into their retirement account. So the priority has to be getting America back on track. Let's stop the overspending. Let's get the supply chain under control. Let's start bringing jobs back to America and making sure that we have a workforce ready to help these small businesses be successful and prosperous.
On the jobs, then, part of it, of course, here, I mean, people's employment, the employment sector, the workforce in general have been big questions. You have over on your campaign website, YvetteHarrell.com, a few points that you make here, most notably under creating jobs and opportunity. You have cut regulations, workforce development, and expanding rural connectivity. Of course, the New Mexico, southern New Mexico in general, kind of a way it's often thought of from this perspective anyway, kind of stretching from Albuquerque and the outskirts of it on down. Of course, a lot of rural areas. So particularly on that point and looking on expanding rural connectivity, what ways do you mean that? Of course, I mean, there's literal, physical connections, but also, I mean, internet, data, those kind of things have been increasingly important.
Absolutely. In fact, we cannot build a strong economy in New Mexico without having access to, like you're just mentioning, broadband. This is good not only for education, but for businesses. But we have got to be able to cut through some of this regulation. Like, for instance, right now, looking at the energy space over in the southeastern part of the district, we have an administration that is not processing the permits for right-of-ways for drilling. We haven't had a lease sale. We've had one lease sale under this administration so far. That is very damaging for capital investment. And I'm an all of the above energy person. I do believe that we can look to achieve some of these goals that are in the green policies, but the truth is we're just not there yet, and we have to have traditional energy sources and even to be able to make some of those green ideas happen. So we have to be very careful, but it is such a complex thing because New Mexico, unfortunately, is just not, we're not competitive in this region as it relates to Texas or Arizona or Colorado, Utah, Oklahoma, because we have a very high crime rate. We have state income taxes that need to be addressed, and we have poorly ranked schools. And until we can work on partnerships with our local, state, and federal partners to really improve New Mexico economics, it's going to be tough, but we've got an opportunity to do just that. And that's why we've worked so hard on some of these issues like the broadband and workforce development, STEM programs, things like of this nature.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Yvette Harrell, Republican representing the New Mexico 2nd Congressional District, Southern New Mexico in general, and of course seeking re-election in the upcoming November 8th election period, midterm elections. To find out more information about some of her policies and things that we are discussing here, again, YvetteHarrell.com. That's YvetteHerrell.com. So on the crime rate then that you mentioned here, I mean, what are some of the issues that you're looking at there? I mean, I think that people even in our broadcast here may be familiar with particularly things going on in, say, Albuquerque or outlying regions, but referring to the district as a whole, what are some of the things that you are focused on?
Yeah, absolutely. We're focused on supporting our law enforcement. I've traveled all over the district, and every single one of these rural communities that have the sheriff's department or even the smaller police departments are understaffed. They've been hit with a lot of unfunded mandates, and I am proud to say that we did pass a bipartisan bill just before we get out for recess that would actually give opportunities for grant funding, which would go for recruitment, retainment, training, even mental health services if our law enforcement need it. But we've got to make sure also in New Mexico it's unique. The state legislature passed legislation to mandate specific radios and technology. Well, these departments can't afford it. And going back to that broadband piece, there are a lot of cell areas and broadband areas that just do not have service. So we have to find ways to fix this problem so that we can keep our communities safe. But one thing that I'm talking about is public-private partnerships and utilizing federal assets for cell range, for cell towers, some of the towers we know that are on federal lands, so that we can bolster that communication and keep our officers and our communities safe.
And then on another aspect of it, of course, the border security, immigration issues here, that has been no stranger to us in our area. So specifically from then the New Mexico Southern District perspective here, I mean, it's a little bit different. We're talking about starts right from in eyeshot of our studios here, starts, of course, right at Mount Cristo Rey, and the triple border there is of Texas, New Mexico, and Mexico, and then extends well over past the horizon. So when it comes to some of those issues, of course, there are some different logistical concerns, different physical concerns. What are some of the major issues you are focusing on as part of your campaign here on that issue?
Right. Well, even since day one last year, we understood that when some of the policies that worked under the previous administration were very effective, like the Remain in Mexico, Title 42, we've pushed for those and to make sure that we have boots on the ground. In fact, I wrote our governor twice and asked her to deploy the National Guard back to the southern border. This is just an unfair practice because this is national security as well as border security. We're putting many of our communities in harm's way. I mean, every state is a border state, but not to mention the fentanyl that's coming across this border. Over 100,000 innocent lives poisoned by fentanyl last year, and it'll be more this year, in the human trafficking, the smuggling. And I am, the first to say we are a nation of immigration, absolutely, but we definitely need to look at reforming the immigration policies in Washington, but we can't do that until we secure the southern border, know who's coming into the country. And I'm sure you saw the numbers just as I've seen them, over 200,000 encounters at the border just last month. That's more than it was even the month before. We just can't sustain this. And truthfully, the American people are paying for this every single day, the food, the housing, transportation, medication. It makes no sense that we would compromise our nation's sovereignty in this way, because I like to ask the question, what other country in the world can you cross into illegally and then be handed, government assistance? I mean, it's just crazy to think that we are compromising American safety in this manner.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Yvette Harrell, of course, the incumbent and seeking re-election as Republican for the New Mexico 2nd Congressional District, representing, again, the entirety of southern New Mexico, stretching more or less all the way up to the outskirts of Albuquerque, but also beyond. Definitely interesting to look up the map there. But again, finding out more information about her position, some of the things we're discussing here for her re-election, YvetteHarrell.com. That's Yvette, YvetteHerrell.com. And so particularly on then those things, of course, the juxtaposition has been made, at least in our local coverage, between such as some of these state level efforts, including between what's going on in Arizona, but then largely Texas. Operation Lone Star has been more than a bit of a discussion here. But of course, one of the things that even we have talked about locally in some of our local coverage from our news partners, such as KFOX 14, has been about, again, what happens when you get just past the Texas border into New Mexico, that there has been a lot of concern about things going, particularly in the Santa Teresa, Sunland Park, those immediate areas, because as much as there has been contention over actual border fences, barriers, those kind of things, there are some, well, let's just call them geographic and terrain issues when you start dealing with some of those remaining mountainous issues. So to relieve those particularly local efforts, that's been one of the strained efforts, particularly for the El Paso sector of the Border Patrol. What are some of the things that can or should or need to be done in those areas?
Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely must have more boots on the ground. And before Chief Gloria Chavez left the El Paso sector, now she's over in the Rio Grande Valley, but just, it's about boots on the ground and utilizing the tools that our Border Patrol men and women need to keep these communities safe. And you're right, when you're closer to the urban areas, and we're seeing a ton of people coming across in that Santa Teresa area, which is a very big concern for those that live in and around the area. And then as you scoot further west, going across those ranches. I've been down to the border 9 different times. I took a group of members of Congress down there so they could understand, just what the unique challenges are. In Congress, I introduced a bill to repay, private citizens and communities for loss of livelihood or property, personal property, private property. Couldn't get any traction on that. And I don't think people really understand just the complexity of this entire push and these caravans that we're seeing coming across, but it will have an impact on economic development, on the safety of the areas. And then, like you say, both sides of the Texas and New Mexico have different governors, different ways of handling this, and there's no continuity in how we're addressing this, crisis at the border.
One final question I want to get to that has come up from our audience previously is that we did have in some recent months, not immediately right now, but with education issues, particularly in New Mexico, there were circumstances with shortages getting to the point where there were actually members of the National Guard that were called in that had some background and training in order to fill in for some classrooms within our broadcast area. So on education in general, what are some of the focuses, again, that you're hearing and that you'll be focusing on from your district when it comes to dealing with that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an important part of our conversation because this is our greatest asset. This is our national treasure, our children. I personally am a big supporter of school choice. I think that parents should have a decision in where their child is educated, whether it's a private school, public school, homeschool. I think these dollars need to follow the children because it's just important that we're funding the child, not the system. And right now we see a state like New Mexico where we've poured billions of dollars into education, yet we are still ranked 50th. And it all kind of goes together, Andrew. You just can't build economic development. You can't build strong economies in your state when your schools are ranked 50th, 51st by some account, depending on if you're talking about DC. But, when you have high crime rates, when you have poorly ranked education systems, it's very difficult to entice people to want to, recruit or retain people in the state. So big deal for me. One of the policies we're working on in DC is the Parental Bill of Rights. This would actually allow parents to be involved with their school boards without having to worry about being investigated by the FBI or the DOJ. We have to give parents that voice back to raise their kids and be involved with their education system.
Anything else that I'd like to add about, again, your policies, your campaign, or the record you're running on, again, seeking re-election November 8th?
Well, I just think this is the election that's going to be so paramount because we really are. As I've talked to people around the district, it is truly about our economy. It's about the high price of fuel, of food, education, the open border. These are just commonalities. And I can tell you, far right and far left, they're not really good at making decisions and solving problems. The American people are. But we just can't afford 2 more years of this overspending in Washington, D.C. So I would just say, pray about it and let's vote our values. Forget party. Let's just vote as people and what's important to ourselves, our businesses, and our future generations.
Again, guest right now has been Yvette Harrell, seeking re-election as the Republican representing the Southern New Mexico District number 2. Again, information about what we've been discussing here and a whole lot more, including other positions she does have listed, such as protecting life and liberty, securing America's future, protecting farmers and ranchers that we weren't quite able to get to here, and reforming healthcare. Again, that website is YvetteHarrell.com, YvetteHerrell.com. So, Congresswoman Harrell, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today about some of your policies, your record, and what you were seeking to do if reelected here today.
I sure do appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
And again, thanks to Congresswoman Harrell for giving us the opportunity to talk with her today. Again, we're focusing on a lot of the top ballot races, well, as much as we can anyway, but we'll, of course, continue to focus on as many as we can squeeze in. A couple of the ones in the works for you, I'll just mention here at the end of the show, but here as well, that we're working on a lot of the county races for you, have some of the closeouts there, going to be delving into the city council races, again, as best we can, with there being 16 candidates there alone. We're going to kind of try to go towards completion of candidate lists on any particular race there, because, well, probably in a couple of them we might have some runoffs coming. So a lot more that go there, and go some interesting comments coming in there as well. Ed Clore, Flaco Jimenez, appreciate the note on the interview, and Ed Clore pointing out that was Flaco Jimenez saying that, but Ed Clore pointing out Frankie's candidate, that is, given the location we've talked about there, one of the candidates on the ballot there. So, well, we'll talk more about that and a whole lot more. Some non-election news, but we'll definitely still keep talking about that after this next break. Stay tuned, more Talk El Paso after this break. Again, comments online, if you can do so safely, delving into some of the issues that you all brought up. We were popping some up on screen, but we'll delve into some of those, plus some, again, non-election news, because even though it dominates, there are other things going on in the world. But all that and more, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. A 17-year-old man who's been in trouble with the law was arrested again in connection to a burglary at a bakery in El Paso's Upper Valley. Jacob Bettis was arrested Sunday by El Paso police. Witnesses reported the burglary in the 8,000 block of Mesa. Investigators looking into other similar burglaries responded and later found Bettis nearby carrying an axe with a black ski mask. Bettis was arrested and charged with burglary. Investigators say a person was accidentally shot in a desert area near Santa Teresa. Doña Ana County Sheriff Kim Stewart said that the area is known as the Wall, popular with off-roaders where people often go shooting. She said the shooting on Sunday was accidental. Officials say the person who was shot was seriously injured and hospitalized in El Paso. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
On Gateway East at Loma Land, 2 semis are blocking the left shoulder, stay to the right. Mesa Street northbound just past Sunland Park at Camille Drive. There's an accident reported. A crash with injuries, Piedras at Pershing, and road construction has the left lane closed on Americas Avenue eastbound at Socorro. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the CBS 4 Warn Weather Center, I'm forecaster Vania Castillo. We are in for a pretty warm day here in the borderland. We're going to be seeing a high of 81 in El Paso, 78 degrees in Las Cruces, and we are expecting to see some even warmer temperatures for this weekend. Expect temperatures in the mid-80s in El Paso and Las Cruces. So again, some warmer temperatures headed our way, but we are expecting to see a pretty big cool down by Monday, seeing those temperatures dropping back into the 60s.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott. Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
A veces la vida toma decisiones por nosotros, así que tenemos que aprovechar las decisiones que sí podemos tomar. Si califica para Medicare y Medicaid, El Paso Health Plus es la cobertura para usted. Este plan local ofrece beneficios suplementales como dental, visión, productos de venta libre y mucho más. El Paso Health Plus también tiene programas para ayudarle a mantener una vida sana. Tiene opciones. Elija local. Elija El Paso Health Plus.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org. Talk El Paso, bringing you the biggest stories from the borderland and beyond, 4 to 6 p.m. every weekday, brought to you in part by Sergio Lewis Body Shop. Call the pros at 915-593-0191. That's Talk El Paso, Monday through Friday at 4, right here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Traffic's bad enough without Mother Nature adding to your headache. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Thank you all so very much for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. And a lot of comments coming in there. Some of the more pertinent ones we'll get to here in just a bit, but a couple other stories I also wanted to make sure we mentioned here, at least made the announcement post, from El Paso Inc. over the weekend and reported by a number of other outlets, but they're the ones I'm looking at the moment. Texas Attorney General declines El Paso DA's request for help in the Walmart shooting case. Now, the headline may be unintentionally misleading, or at the very least it might be different than what you assume. This is why you never just read headlines, folks. I mean, yes, I read headlines to you because that's an introduction so you can look up the story yourself here. But essentially drilling down into it, El Paso Inc. did a public information request, FOIA request for this information to find out exactly what has been communicated back and forth between the district attorney's office. Of course, there was a letter that was of note some, God bless, I don't have the date in front of me, weeks, but feels like months ago. Probably was closer to a month, but feels like many months ago, I guess is what I'm saying. That was sent out by the district attorney's office asking for assistance. Both, was addressed to Merrick Garland, the, of course, U.S. Attorney General, but then also other entities within the state governor's office, that kind of thing. So response was received. Again, El Paso Inc. reporting on this, saying that there was specifically no date on the one that they received. The letter addressed to Curtis Cox, Senior Division Chief for the 34th Judicial District Attorney's Office, the one that is, of course, held by Yvonne Rosales, but was undated, attached to an email sent September 29th from Amber Platt, Associate Deputy Attorney General for Criminal Justice. Again, this is according to the El Paso Inc. Reporting on this point. And, well, just quoting directly from the record as they have it and the letter they have, the Attorney General, quote, is willing to prosecute State versus Crucius as the District Attorney pro tem. This allows our office and our prosecutors to exclusively handle this case as the attorney of record. So the reason that I took, again, maybe just minor issue with the headline here, saying declines the request for help, it's not saying that, no, we don't want to be involved. Essentially, according to this letter, what the Attorney General office is saying is that if you want us to take it over, we will. But in terms of being your study buddy, so to speak, that's my phrasing, not theirs. No, we will not be doing that. We won't help you do the note review. We would want to just take it on. So what has come after that kind of remains to be seen, but a very interesting and major updates coming out of the situations involving the district attorney's office. Interesting point there. Lorenzo Colon asking, what I would talk more about the libertarians. We generally tend to talk about people who are on the ballots. I'm honestly, tell you what, I got it pulled up here. I mean, make sure that I'm not missing anyone, particularly for these county. I know that there are some, when it comes to some statewide races, that there are some libertarians on the ballot, but let's just say, in those cases, I probably would be willing to talk with a gubernatorial candidate, but there's also some in some cases, issues of actually I'm sorry, I'll get to another comment that is making me laugh out loud here in just a second. Let's just say seriousness of intent and real reasonableness of intent is also kind of a part of it. Let's just say I get reached out to decent amount of time for people who say, like, I'm running for president and I wrote a book. You should interview me about both. And those usually don't show up on any ballot, much less one that is around here. But again, I'm not opposed to it. Have them drop me a line, Andrew Polk at iHeartMedia.com, and I'd be happy to talk about it, but not a whole lot on exactly local ballots is what I'm going to say there. And then just one of the other points here is also have Sean Gardner joining us over on the social media. Eric McNabb, when you talk from a place of ignorance, boy, doesn't it show sometimes, saying, I don't know who El Paso Inc. is, and then going on to defame them and just make a completely baseless things about them, comparing them to Fox News and Sinclair Broadcasting. I mean, there's a way to show your whole posterior, but I can't imagine a more succinct way to do it than this here. So, if you want to be informed, also, we've had the editor of El Paso Inc. on regularly on the program here about first Tuesday of every month here. So, again, talking about things that you don't understand, huh? In any case. And Calvin Williams, you know what, Calvin, if you end up on a ballot, I will be happy to interview you. But also, the write-in ballot is a ballot. It's not just something you can declare. I'm just saying here. And more comments coming on those points there, including RJ saying on the district attorney's case, saying she just hand it to the state and federal and let real prosecutors get on with it. But some of the other points there from our interview, again, I want to make sure we get to that before the end of this hour. Specifically, some of the points coming in, including Richard Lewis said, I am a Democrat, but liked what she had to say. Vote your values, discriminate extreme right and left. I concur. Referring there to, again, our interview from previous hour. Yvette Harrell, a congresswoman, Republican incumbent for the New Mexico 2nd Congressional District. Marky Mandigo with an interesting point there on the idea of the broadband internet access being part of any of the infrastructure funding, kind of coming out against it, saying taxpayers should not pay for private good. They knew they wouldn't have internet when they moved there. And yet there's going to be some, okay, I get what you're saying. Why should we give them internet? But I think there's a difference between providing the infrastructure and providing the service. I guess I see broadband in this day and age as being akin to having actual road access and connection. Sure, if you moved to the boonies where you had to put up a generator, dig a well, those kind of things, yeah, you're expecting a certain level of accessibility. But given the fact that broadband, particularly in the last 5 years, if not the last 2 years, has completely changed what your quality of life could be. And I don't just mean entertainment. Sure, if we were just talking about, can I stream Netflix fast enough? Yeah, you know what? That's go look for the Blockbuster you probably still have in your area, or the Redbox, or whatever. That signifies you might not have the greatest internet speed. But when it comes to broadband, honestly, there are people who have lived out in middle of nowhere, but felt like they were accessible enough, they had roads, they had city water, but they just want to be close to everyone, but didn't necessarily have this kind of technology. And it has truly revolutionized things. If we want to talk about increasing gaps, not even just in, again, quality of life, but of generational outcomes, broadband might be one of those indicators for the future. I mean, this is a little crystal ball cloudy moment here, I'm going to admit. So this is a little bit of my forecasting, but just looking what current conditions are and extrapolating those into the future, the lack of internet access or connectivity might be a serious issue. And those cold phrases we talk about, underserved communities and things like that, this could maybe really play into the creation of new ones in the future. So Not saying that I agree that everyone should have like free internet access. There's a whole lot of logistical concerns that like it would be a great idea, I think, but getting there like A to B, connecting the dots is another question. But going to the infrastructure so that it can be, again, I kind of see it at this point like it being with, roads, it being that you have the connection and then you do what you will with it. And particularly since, I don't think there is much, if any, like federal actual owned towers or anything, or at least maintained one. The service, anyway, there might be federal owned towers. I don't want to get myself into a lurch there, but the fact that the service provided by private companies, making it so that more economic interchanges can happen, I think would be important. Falcon Menace kind of showing the other way that when I lived in Cloudcroft, I had running water, but I had no running water, but I had broadband. Okay. Maybe some priorities of things. Honestly, the way that these work these days, the fact that it doesn't have to be like an actual wire going into your house or a cable, whatever. It can just be a cell tower. That's the way that a lot of places that we would probably from this perspective here in the U.S. consider the third world have decent broadband internet access these days because they kind of skipped over the physical connection generation and went just straight with wireless towers just about everywhere, including in places of rural Central and South America and Africa. But that's another whole thing to get into. Point is that I think that making it so that it's possible, if not exactly provided, will probably be an important thing for the future, probably akin to what the revolutions of bringing like services, water, utilities, roads has done for otherwise, obscure and incredibly impoverished rural areas. This could have a change there as well. Tell you what, we got to go ahead and take that next break. Now, coming out of this break, we are going to go ahead and open up those phone lines as well as we do normally at this point during the show. So if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Heads up for an accident. Gateway South at Dyer slowing traffic. Gateway East at Loma Land, a disabled vehicle, actually two semis blocking the left shoulder. Northbound Mesa Street after Sunland Park, there's a crash at Camille Drive slowing traffic. Northbound Mesa is slow from the downtown exits to the 10 Desert Boulevard with a 5-minute delay. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager of Sunland Park, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Right now, our inventory of new and certified pre-owned vehicles is better than ever. So our goal this month is to break our all-time sales record. We'll do whatever it takes to make a deal.
It's Ram Power Days at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, and our savings and inventory are huge. Upside down in your current trade? We want it, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, regardless of make or model. So you can drive home a new or certified pre-owned vehicle for less. For a limited time, get 2.9% APR on the all-new 2022 Ram, or get 0% APR on the all-new 2022 full-size Wagoneer SUV with third-row seating. Plus, we have great financing programs for good credit or less than perfect credit. All military personnel and first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, where buying a car is fun at I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso. El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus T10L. 0 APR for 36 months is $27.78 per thousand finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Help the planet with a tip from iHeartRadio Earth. Water heating can account for up to 25% of the energy consumed in your home. Save money and energy and improve the comfort of your home by turning down the temperature of your water heater from 140 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It can save you up to 22% on your energy bill annually. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living, or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
Catch the show in the sky and help support the fight against cancer with the 4th annual Flight to Fight Cancer Research Awareness Fly-In on October 29th, hosted by Francis Aviation and the War Eagles Air Museum, and powered by News Radio 690 KTSM and Sunny 99.9. Details on Facebook and Instagram at Cancer Flight.
When we have a dedicated public servant, we need to hold on to them. We have that servant in Justice Jeff Alley at the 8th Court of Appeals. After practicing law for 29 years in El Paso, he gave up a law firm partnership to work at the court. Governor Abbott has twice appointed him to serve as a justice on the court, a principled conservative who fairly applies the law as written. We need to keep Justice Jeff Alley.
Political ad paid for by Justice Jeff Alley in accordance with the voluntary limits of the Judicial Campaign Fairness Act.
As the leaves change, leave the hiring to Indeed. Their all-in-one hiring platform helps you attract, interview, and hire candidates all from one place. And Indeed's interview tool lets you schedule and conduct virtual interviews right from their website. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show, particularly at this point during the program. Do have that phone line open, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We'll get into those calls here. Yeah, we're short timing it here this segment, so we'll be doing that top of the next hour. So if you're on the line, stay there. If you want to get on the line, and it just filled up. So you just keep the number down, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Oh, the irony. The comments still give me life, but the irony might kill me one of these days here. Take a look for yourself. Facebook's the primary one if you really want to chime in over there. But however you're doing it, on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or on those social media pages, keep it going. And we'll get back to those phone lines as well. One point I want to make, just since we're seeming to get into a infrastructure debate here, Kelvin Williams bringing up a point here about there's a profitable market for internet where you live. It will be there. If not, and the government gets involved, everyone's bill will go up. I understand the compunction about, the whole, what is the umpteen many words that are scarce in English language. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Like, I get that level of reasoning with it. But let me just say this. As much as we talk about, just completely shift the conversation, much as we talk about there being certain businesses that we would love to see in town, like H-E-B, Buc-ee's, Trader Joe's, those kind of things, it is undeniable that they would make money here. Like, there's no even like little bit of compunction. Look at anything new that comes to El Paso of that size, scale, and type. They do gangbusters here in town. I have no idea. If I had the wherewithal and the several $100 million it would take to do that, I would make that happen. I would just figure out a way to force it through. But so you may think like, okay, so why haven't they? Because it's not just about how much money would they make, but how much time, energy, opportunity costs, essentially. So point I'm getting at is that infrastructure is different than service providing. So making it so that the infrastructure can't even be there, that changes the calculation somewhat. So no, I'm not interested in there being, more regulations, more fees, more inherent cost to what could otherwise be provided as a service. But to say that, well, we're going to make it so that it's easier for you to provide the service, that can make a difference. And that's kind of where I come out on this. But Stephen Christopher, also a bravo to him, saying, well, I'm normally off Tuesday, but I've still requested the 8th. My daughter and I are going to be voting, so you'll get the chime when we get there. And Kevin Williams saying, heard Buc-ee's was working on getting here. I'll believe it when I see it, just because the rumor mills keep going. That's going to lead us to that next break in the top of the hour here. A whole lot of the things that people question the rumor, but in any case, got to take that break. Coming out of this break, we'll get to more of the calls, more of the comments, more of everything we do. So stay tuned. We're Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Heads up for an accident. Gateway South at Dyer slowing traffic. Gateway East at Loma Land, a disabled vehicle, actually 2 semis blocking the left shoulder. Northbound Mesa Street after Sunland Park, there's a crash at Camille Drive slowing traffic. Northbound Mesa is slow from the downtown exits to the 10 Desert Boulevard with a 5-minute delay. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Standing up for what's right. Helping out when things go wrong. Seeking the truth and speaking our minds. Not just making records, but breaking them. Leading the way behind the camera, beyond the runway, and on the silver screen. Not just making our mark, but making a difference. Now that's a job for a Girl Scout. Girl Scouts, preparing girls for a lifetime of leadership.
News on the hour and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Chris Coraggio. Wall Street is starting out the week on a high note. Stocks extended Friday's rally as earnings season kicked into high gear.
GM results are due tomorrow, along with earnings from tech giants, including Alphabet and Microsoft. Apple and Amazon are due out later in the week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 417 points to finish above 31,000. The S&P 500 added 44 points to 3797. The Nasdaq rose 92 points to 10,952. Top officials in Missouri are heartbroken over a school shooting in St. Louis. At least 3 people, including the shooter, are dead after the incident today that happened at Central VPA High School. Governor Mike Parson tweeted state officials are coordinating with their local counterparts. State Attorney General Eric Schmidt called it a senseless tragedy. Senator Josh Hawley described news of the shooting as devastating. Several others were injured as a result of gunshots, shrapnel, and cardiac arrest. The teen accused of killing 4 students and injuring 7 others at Oxford High School in Michigan last fall is pleading guilty to all charges. Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald spoke after the hearing.
This is an important day for our community, the survivors, and especially those who lost children they loved.
Ethan Crumbley appeared in court and was read all 24 counts against him. He admitted to taking a gun into the school that was hidden in his backpack. He told the court that while his parents purchased the gun, he picked it out and paid for it. Crumbley's next court appearance is tentatively set for February 9th. Russia's former president is refuting claims that his country is running low on weapons in its war against Ukraine. Medvedev's comments contradict reports made by Western defense analysts. He went on to say that an inspection from President Vladimir Putin accelerated the supply of equipment to troops. McDonald's is bringing back one of its more popular meals. Starting today, customers can order the McRib sandwich on the company app for delivery or pickup until November 20th. The McDonald's website urges people to get the sandwich while they can because this is the McRib Farewell Tour. I'm Chris Coraggio, NBC News Radio. New research shows marijuana can worsen post-surgery pain for many users. Healthline.com reports a study was shown at the annual American Society of Anesthesiologists this year. Researchers studied thousands of elective surgeries. They found those who used weed within a month of the surgery had 14% more pain the day after, and more of them took painkillers than people who didn't use cannabis. Actor Matthew Perry says he's probably spent $9 million trying to get sober. Speaking with the New York Times, Perry said he would fake back injuries or migraine headaches to get access to narcotics. The Friends actor says he wasn't doing drugs to feel high, but just wanted to sit on his couch, take 5 Vicodin, and watch a movie. He added that that was heaven for him, but it no longer is. An estimated $625 million is up for grabs in tonight's Powerball drawing. Lottery officials increased the jackpot this morning because of brisk ticket sales. The Powerball jackpot has been building since August 3rd when someone in Pennsylvania won nearly $207 million. Drawings in the multi-state lottery are held Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 10:59 Eastern. Texas Senator Ted Cruz had his appearance on The View interrupted today. He shared his reaction a little while later.
They were climate radicals and they were screaming, but it shut The View down for a while. And I'll tell you, it was a bit of a circus.
The show's moderator, Whoopi Goldberg, said, "We hear what you have to say, but you got to go. You got to let us do our job." The women on the panel continued to defend that they do cover climate change before cutting to a commercial. Celebrities are getting ready to run the New York City Marathon on November 6th. Actor Ashton Kutcher will make his marathon debut and run in support of his charity, while New York Giants former running back Tiki Barber will continue his streak by returning for his 8th New York City Marathon. The 26.2-mile race is held annually on the first Sunday in November and features a wide population of runners from the world's top professional athletes to a vast range of competitive, recreational, and charity runners. The race will be at full capacity this year with 50,000 runners. I'm Chris Coraggio, NBC News Radio.
Now your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Bills. That's bills. Enter it now.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Hi, I'm Barbara Cueto, author of From Mafia Princess to God's Princess. That's my story of how God delivered me from a life of hopelessness to a life of victory. And I believe that He wants that for all of us. If you or someone you love need to experience a night of hope and restoration, Please join me at Freedom in Christ Residential Center on Friday, October 28th at 6:30 p.m. for this ladies-only Warrior Princess Night. There will be testimonies, worship, door prizes, teaching, a tiara ceremony, and whatever else God has in store for his princesses. Ladies, let's just have fun. That's Friday, October 28th at 6:30 p.m. at 3331 Idalia. For more info on this free event, call 915-566-1197. That's 915-566-1197. See you there.
Tired of the news about how everything is costing more?
Everything is stubbornly high.
Us too. That's why we made the iHeartRadio app absolutely free. When you download the free iHeartRadio app, you have radio stations you love at your fingertips whenever you want, wherever you want, along with millions of podcasts from the news you crave to the true crime series you can't resist. Playlists to fit any mood or activity. And here's the part you don't want to miss. It's all free. Download the free iHeartRadio app and discover music, radio, and podcasts you'll love.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. You know, we always mention just about all of these because we got a lot of stuff to say, a lot of stuff to get to, a lot of comments that come in. If you want to make them, social media is one of the better places to do so, even if sometimes the irony is biting. But in any case, we also have phone calls coming in, full up at the moment, but if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Again, the comments give me life in so many ways. It's a reason we do this. I know that some people ask me, how can we deal with these issues? But I got to be honest with you. The comments give me life, and I defy the never read the comments things that go online here. So let me just say, there's just a point before we get into the calls here, that if any time you feel like someone is wrong or saying something incorrect, you're welcome to bring that up here. It's when you start talking about everyone and trying to slap around the audience that we have here. We're welcoming anyone who wants to seriously talk about the things that affect us here in the borderlands, or at the very least have an in-depth discussion about it. Yes, I'm not always the most serious. I will freely admit to that as well. But as long as it comes around to seriousness more often than not, that's about the balance we got to strive here. If we start talking over people, just saying, well, you're all idiots who don't understand, let me just give you a little bit of a hint. Talking about the actual issues is kind of the best way forward in my experience and what I've seen on this program anyway. Actually talking about the issues, as opposed to, well, we shouldn't talk about that because that's bad, or, well, you don't even know what you're talking about, as opposed to saying, and here's why, but going into because you're bad and will always be bad and will have no morals and values. Yeah, it's not going to work out for you. Just going to make that point here. And again, more comments coming in. Flaco Jimenez, Eric McNabb, Stephen Christopher, Calvin Williams, Barbara Carrasco, RJ, and RJ asking about what previous guests I mentioned. Yes, talking about Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. We were talking about earlier. Eric von Holstein Rathlow, Marky Mandingo, Amber Banda, dropping some of those likes and reacts. Do appreciate here. Over on the social media, Facebook primarily, we do have Flaco Jimenez, Calvin Williams, Amber Banda, Richard Lewis, Barbara Carrasco, Glenn Stewart, Ida Beza Gardner, Richard Janicek, Angel Rueda, Ed Clore, Robbie Flores, and Monica Cervantes. Do appreciate it with all the algorithmic things. But let's get back to those phone lines now. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. We do have James in Far East on the phone with us here right now. James, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
No, sure thing. What's on your mind?
Well, I guess first off, I wanted to, in response to Yvette Harrell's interview, I, don't always agree with every single thing that Republicans say, but, those points that she hit about the desire for more prosperity in New Mexico, I think it resonates with me. And I kind of heard the follow-up comment from somebody about El Paso's lack of of commerce.
Mm-hmm.
And you really can't do much if you don't have that sort of economic prosperity. And there's definitely a reason why other parts of Texas have been booming, and yet El Paso with New Mexico has been slagging. And I know we want more for El Paso. And so that's kind of why I wanted to bring some points up to you and your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, you know, I'd ask the audience and yourself to share this with fellow voters and have them think about it. First off, I was disappointed by the mayor. You know, the mayor often, he does good things. I appreciate when he vetoes property tax hikes or something of the sort, budgets. But we have him on video saying one thing about the White House asking him not to declare a national disaster. And then the next minute, he's talking to the press saying the exact opposite, all to protect political relationships. And he's putting El Paso before, he's putting these relationships with these other politicians ahead of El Paso. And that's just really unfortunate and disappointing that he would do that.
Yeah, we talked about a little bit last week, and again, I was mistaken in my initial assumption or impressions of that thing that, there was during an open city council meeting. He said that there was communication going on between him and federal authorities writ large, and some specific ones mentioned there, as you brought up here. What I will say is that I just want to bring up, because it's one of the other things to focus on here, and internet just refreshed it on me, but the El Paso County, City of El Paso dashboard for when it comes to the migrant crisis, again, elpasotexas.gov/migrant-crisis, is showing a marked decrease ever since some of those federal policies changed. Now, whether that's actually solving the issue or some other local reporting going on saying it's taking the issue and pushing it elsewhere is another finer point to get into, but that's just one of the current situations involving this whole discussion. Absolutely.
I definitely feel like this situation is never going to get addressed until they take it seriously. It seems like, the president or the vice president, they don't really they refuse to even come and visit the border and see the situation and get it addressed. And I'm not really extreme on either side of this immigration issue. Some people want to close the border and deport everyone, and other people want it completely open. I wish both sides could come to the table and just fix the situation, address both concerns. Southern New Mexico, I visited northern New Mexico, and I know a lot of those people, they don't want border security. They don't seem to have any sympathy, but people who live in southern New Mexico or in Texas along the Mexican border, they deal with it. The last point, though, I think is even more relevant to El Paso voters. The Democrat Party leadership came out united in support of that UMC bond a few months back. They spoke, you had Emma Acosta, president of the East Side Democrats, Dora Oaxaca, former El Paso Democratic chair, Beatriz Vera, former state Democrat executive committee woman, which is a very high-ranking Democrat, and you had Ana Perez, the treasurer for the Tejano Democrats, all speaking strongly in favor of a intent to pass a certificate of obligation bond for up to $400 million, completely disregarding the concerns of the taxpayer. And then, on September 12th, Emma Acosta came back with resolutions that were passed by the East Side Democrats supporting the UMC bond, and she also spoke, unfortunately, on behalf of LULAC in favor of the UMC bond. Also, Michael Apodaca, chairman of the El Paso Democrat Party, submitted a resolution that was passed by the El Paso Democratic Party precinct chairs. They passed this resolution on August 9th that they support the UMC bond because Veronica Escobar wanted to protect her legacy. And I think she was furious that the citizens organized themselves to submit the largest petition ever submitted in Texas history to prevent the CO bond from being able to be considered. But it's just, the Democrat Party leadership is united in support of these sort of reckless tax and spend policies. I mean, I'll give credit to some Democrats like David Stout, who on June 27th, he kind of pushed back against Jacobson Cintron and said, how come you guys can't fundraise this with charities and whatnot, like other communities and other cities do? And Jacobson Cintron was asking, like, oh, that should be the county's job Jacobson Cintron and these other rent seekers, they're lazy. They don't want to go out and earn money or fundraise like they do in other cities for hospitals. They just want to ask the taxpayer to pay a 22% property tax increase through a CO bond and not have to do any work. the Republican Party, sometimes they get maybe an issue wrong here and there or whatever. I don't know. But you know what? I was very proud of the Republican Party because, Ray Baca, the county chair, came to speak against it. Carol Cassidy, president of the Cactus Rose Republican Women, came out to speak against it, both on June and later in September. I spoke against it both in June and September, and the Republican Party even lent their headquarters so that we could make sure that those signatures were verified. We were at the Republican Party headquarters for 2 weeks with great help from the Republican Party, giving us that office space so that we could do the work. And we were fighting for the taxpayers because we know that El Paso's got the highest property taxes in the state of Texas, with more certificate of obligation bond debt than all the other major cities of Texas combined. So there's a stark difference right there. Not talking about other issues that don't really maybe relate to the common voter, like there are concerns about the child gender, sex changes, and those are important issues. But I just don't think that really matters to the common El Paso voter like this certificate of obligation property tax issue was. There's a clear difference in who we should be supporting for change.
Fair enough here. Well, appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for the updates on some of those things here. Again, just because the question came up here, that's James calling in from Far East. And, I mean, some of those things involving the UMC bond, I mean, I'm sure that those conversations will be ongoing. But let me just say this, that when it comes to dealing with these issues, I mean, happy to talk about the candidates and with their issues, and we'll keep doing that. But, I mean, these things are going to keep evolving. Again, I'm positive. Yeah, again, I wouldn't bet money on it just because betting on politics just sounds so wrong to me, but I have a pretty fair guess that this is not the last time in even just recent times we're going to be hearing about that potential for bonds or certificate of obligations or public money being spent when it comes to UMC in the near future, whether or not it's this year or next or maybe even the year after. That's the part I'm fuzzy on here. But let's go ahead and take a little more call before we hit that next break. We do have Raul in Northeast El Paso on the line with us right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Well, I'd like to talk about inflation, which is a local issue. It affects everyone, everywhere, right? But I'd like to preface that by saying, that most Americans are not only ignorant about their country's history, government, economy, and personal finance, but they know even less about foreign countries and their politics and economies. Most Americans are quite provincial. About only 5% have traveled abroad, and 1% of those are the people who were in the military. And only 1 out of 5 Americans is bilingual. And most Americans read at a 7th to 8th grade level, according to the Literacy Project. And Republicans are banning books. How's that? 2 out of 3 Americans cannot name the 3 branches of the federal government. And that's according to the Annenberg Constitution Day Civic Survey. And 1/3 of eligible voters don't vote. Now, Trump said he loved the poorly educated, and the poorly educated obviously love him. And the science deniers, the history deniers, the believers in all kinds of myths and fantasies, like the big lie. Now, let's talk again inflation. Inflation is a global phenomenon, and it's worse in other countries, like in Hungary, where Trump's and Putin's and the Republicans' pal, who recently spoke at CPAC, this autocrat named Viktor Orban, over there inflation is 20.10%. The loaf of bread went up 70%. In Russia, Trump's pal's country, it's running 13.7. Italy 8.9. Spain 8.9. United Kingdom 9.9. Germany 10%. Netherlands 14.5%. So, hey, there you go. We're doing better than other countries, and it's not Biden's fault that all those countries are having inflation. It's a global phenomenon. Now, inflation is due to a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic that has put all kinds of kinks in the labor and parts market, and with continuing COVID lockdowns in China. Now, I just finally got my printer. It's a specialized printer, but it took almost 5 months and 3 vendors. So I guess Joe Biden must be doing something right over there, because I'm sure that printer's full of Chinese parts, and Trump had his clothing lines made over there in China. And again, so did his daughter. Inflation is due to our dependence on formerly inexpensive products made by cheap labor abroad. And this was made possible by Republican Richard Nixon and his financial backers in the manufacturing world who wanted to rid themselves of labor unions, workplace and environmental regulations by moving their manufacturing operations to communist China. And they've also moved to Mexico or wherever they can find cheap labor and getting in bed in case with the Chinese and getting in bed with the Chinese Communist Party that's in business with every business in China. And their workers don't have the only rights they have is the ones that the Communist Party grants them, which are next to none. Now, inflation is a global phenomenon, and it's worse in other countries. Inflation has been caused by Trump's pal, Putin, invading Ukraine, which turns out to be one of the world's major grain and energy producers. Inflation has been caused by Putin invading Ukraine and the U.S. putting sanctions on Russian oil. Inflation is a global phenomenon, and the U.S. is having among the lowest rates of inflation compared to other countries.
To go to that last point, then, I mean, yes, there certainly have been sanctions and supply disruptions in like oil and energy supplies coming from Ukraine, embargoes, and, you know, the sanctions, particularly on Russia. But that was never a huge part of the U.S. actual energy supply. I think it's somewhere in the low double to single digits overall. So pointing it all on that, I mean, you need to bring out other global concerns. I mean, clearly, you know, particularly food supplies for other parts of the world, particularly like Africa and others, and just, you know, the Middle East, definitely going to be affected by the exports. And those certainly have been coming up here. But again, I still have a level of, okay, so it's not as bad here, but there's nothing that can really be done here. It's kind of this double-sided, double-edged sword, really, if you want to get to it, about how, well, it's bad, but also he's not able to do anything, which is also like, okay, but you really think that's going to work out for you as an argument? And to your point about the, I guess, relative ignorance of American people, I'm going to dispute you on that, but I will say that there are certain patterns of voting that can be looked at. Then when people are unhappy, they tend to vote against whoever is even perceived to be in charge here because, well, that's the recourse that they have. So I guess maybe it plays in a little bit, but yeah, I'm still not going to entirely go along with what you were saying there. Point is that if things are not seen as favorable, the party in power tends to take it in the shorts. That can even be seen, heck, here locally, when it happened during the mayoral election, when we had a landslide because of, well, pandemic era restrictions. So whether or not, I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong in your reasoning, but the fact of the matter is that to say that, and therefore this election will go the way I think it will, I'm not going to quite follow you down that level of reasoning along with it here because, well, I've kind of been saying it for a minute, that focus on social issues can be interesting and engaging. You'll reach those like single issue voters there, but there's just that one pervasive phrase whenever it comes to elections that keeps playing in the back of my mind. It's the economy, stupid. And either fix it or make one hell of a case why it's not your fault. And even then saying, well, yeah, it's bad, but I can't do anything about it. Just think how that then sounds to the average voter you're describing there, I guess is my further point here. So let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we're going to go ahead and talk more about some of the more issues we're dealing with here locally. At least one story I realized I missed involving a dramatic sounding rescue in the region, and I got a little bit of experience I can talk about with that. But all that and more, again, if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
No major crashes right now in your El Paso freeways. Gateway south at Dyer. That accident from earlier is cleared. All lanes are open there. I-10 eastbound at Zaragoza. Vehicles blocking the right shoulder there. Southbound on Memorial Highway from the Spur down to Iron Medics. It's slow traffic with 5-minute delays. And an accident, Schuster Avenue at Virginia. Try Arizona Avenue or Brown Street to get around that. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
As you crunch the numbers trying to get the most out of your dollar, we'll throw in a $1,000 inflation bonus. Much better. Listen every hour from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. weekdays for your chance to win $1,000.
Listen to win $1,000 every hour, weekdays from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. It's It's the 1,000 inflation bonus on News Talk 690 AM.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. At Lowe's, every pro is an MVP to us. MVP's Pro Rewards members visit Lowe's now and earn bonus points on products and brands like DeWalt. Then redeem for Lowe's e-gift cards and more. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees. After applicable discounts, if any. Subject to program terms. Visit Lowes.com/MVP bonus points for details. Now through 10/28.
Catch the show in the sky and help support the fight against cancer with the 4th annual Flight to Fight Cancer Research Awareness Fly-In on October 29th at the Doña Ana International Jetport. Hosted by Francis Aviation and the War Eagles Air Museum and powered by News Radio 690 KTSM and Sun 99.9. Kicking off at 10 a.m. with skydiving, airplane exhibitions, car shows, food, vendors, music, and much more. Tickets $10 at the door or on Eventbrite. Children 12 and under get in free. Follow the Flight to Fight on Facebook and Instagram at Cancer Flight. Recognized by the American Cancer Society and a Relay for Life team.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know how important it is to be confident in all of life's close-up moments.
And bad breath can rob you of your confidence.
Yeah, it can. Whenever I'm rubbing elbows with celebrities or friends or just chilling at home, I got to make sure I have the confidence that comes with Smart Mouth mouthwash.
Smart Mouth is clinically proven to eliminate and prevent bad breath for 24 hours with just 2 rinses a day.
Get to your favorite retailer right now for that kind of better together confidence.
Find Smart Mouth at your favorite retailer or at smartmouth.com/radio.
Ad paid for by the Sentinel Group. Attention Marines, military personnel, families, and contractors who were stationed at Camp Lejeune. Were you present at Camp Lejeune between August 1953 and December of 1987? You may be entitled to significant compensation. For nearly 34 years, those in the Marine Corps' base Camp Lejeune were exposed to contaminated drinking water, resulting in devastating injuries, including several forms of cancer, adverse birth outcomes, Parkinson's disease, and more. North Carolina's procedural laws have prevented victims from getting the justice they deserve, but passage of the Camp Lejeune Justice Act of 2022 would allow you or a loved one to file lawsuits seeking compensation for illnesses and injuries linked to the toxic water. Call today for your free consultation. 800-484-9358. Let our experienced attorneys fight to get you the compensation you deserve, and you pay nothing unless there's a recovery in your favor. Call 800-484-9358. That's 800-484-9358. Again, 800-484-9358.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Of course, those phone lines open up as well. Well, full up at the moment, but if you want to squeeze on, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. And some other maybe non-election stories we'll get to here in a bit, but a whole lot going on. Of course, continuing our interviews with candidates coming up. We're not doing another second hour one today, but it might happen later. Again, no promises when it comes to elections. We're going to get in as many as we can to keep you all as informed, because it also, in fact, you can see these online. If you haven't been over on our social media, I'd recommend it for those of you without accounts but with internet access. I'd recommend the YouTube more than anything, because YouTube's a little bit less finicky about sign-ins or things like that. You can see all of our shows that are up there, but let's go back to those phone lines now. 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Tom on the west side with us right now. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Andrew. Yes, great quote. It's the economy's stupid. I believe that was James Carville in 1992 that said that when Clinton was running against George Bush, if I can recall. And he's quite right about that. And I think it's going to be history repeating itself here in about 2 weeks. It's funny what Raul said there in the previous caller about inflation, that it's a global phenomenon. You know, it's happening globally, but why is it happening globally? It's happening globally because these leftist politicians are printing money like crazy. So all that is simply doing is devaluing our fiat currency that we have. If you look at the top of your dollar bill, what it says on there is a reserve is a note. It's a reserve note, Federal Reserve note. That's just debt. That's just not really money. Real money would be gold, silver, something of value. And, and the Democrats purposefully performing this on our whole system, just so they can grab more power. Because if they can get our money devalued more and more, they're going to have us more dependent on government. And that's exactly what they're doing. And it's funny, you look at the Democrats locally in El Paso with what they're doing. You feel like they really believe they're the ruling class. If you think about it, you watch the way they're behaving. There was a debate at State Line Restaurant Wednesday night that was put on by the League of Women Voters, which is actually a leftist group. And neither Veronica Escobar or County Judge Samaniego showed up for that debate. I don't know if you had heard about that, Andrew, but I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we brought that up on Friday or Thursday or Friday on the show, talked about the fact that it was going on I think it was like doors open at 5:30 and then proceedings started at 6. So I was encouraging people to, maybe consider heading out there. Have us on the car on your way kind of thing. I know a little bit self-serving there, but I mean, I'm in favor of forums in general, but I will say that if you look at some of the other coverage for other local media outlets, incumbents, and okay, I'm not saying this apropos of anyone specifically, so I'm going to take a step back from that, but that it has been a concerning trend that I'm not saying is completely all cases, but frankly, anytime it happens is concerning to me, locally anyway, that incumbents have been unwilling, or at least where there isn't an incumbent, clear front runners have been unwilling to therefore, step in front of audiences thing. And to a certain level, I get it. I mean, if you're out in front and you have a lot of people that are just going to be particularly in like group form, that's all they're going to be doing is attacking you as they try to climb on top of you, whole bucket of crabs analogy. But the thing is, that's them not willing to do that because they only seeing it as only have something to lose. Just it irks me in a way that is kind of hard to describe. So I've thought about it a lot. And the fact of the matter is, debates don't necessarily prove if policy is good or not, but if you being unable to defend your values and state why it's a good idea, I mean, heck, half of being a politician is being a communicator. So I'm not saying that you have to be the most clearly, the best spoken, but if you can't, particularly when pressure is put on it, defend an idea that you want to see implemented, it does, I guess, raise certain questions. I mean, even in my mind, but also in the mind of the voters here. So I will say that's a long way to say I saw what you were talking about and I'm not in favor of it, but I'm also, I guess at this point, I'm not surprised that has been happening. I've been noticing, and I hope it doesn't continue to be a trend.
Yeah, and I think the voters have the opportunity to, vote out Veronica Escobar. We have a great candidate in Irene Armendariz. El Pasoans should step up right now and take action and do this, just like what happened with the petition against the certificates of obligation for UMC and the medical center. And that other caller, James, was spot on. You look at that petition being the number one petition in the history of Texas, that just goes to show what the temperature is in our city when it comes to us being taxed to a level that is just absolutely outrageous. So please, people, get out there, vote for Irene Armendariz and vote for Blanca Trout. Let's get these leftists out of these political positions and let's get our city back on track. That's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. All right, you have a good one there. Just as a further note here, we of course had Irene Armendariz Jackson on the program previously, and of course have in all these congressional races we've reached out to all of the campaigns, and we'll have more announcements as we can. We of course did have Blanca Trout that he mentioned on the show previously, so you can catch those interviews over on our social media if you want to see the replays of them in the previous episodes. We're also going to be talking about having on the program tomorrow the other candidate in that county commissioner's precinct 4 race, Sergio Coronado, and the Democrat side of the ballot. So we'll be talking with him as well. So stay tuned for that tomorrow, along with a whole lot more movement that we're working on for you. So tell you what, let's go ahead and take that next break right now, get back on track so I stop blowing up these breaks. But back off the line, on the line after this. So if you're on the line, stay there. If you want to call in, again, that number to do so, full up at the moment, got to be quick with it. The number is to call 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olgain with your KFOX 14 news update. A 17-year-old man who has been in trouble with the law was arrested again in connection to a burglary at a bakery in El Paso's Upper Valley. Jacob Bettis was arrested Sunday by El Paso police. Witnesses reported the burglary in the 8,000 block of Mesa. Investigators looking into other similar burglaries responded and later found Bettis nearby carrying an axe with a black ski mask. Bettis was arrested and charged with burglary. Investigators say a person was accidentally shot in a desert area near Santa Teresa. Doña Ana County Sheriff Kim Stewart said that the area is known as the Wall, popular with off-roaders where people often go shooting. She said the shooting on Sunday was accidental. Officials say the person who was shot was seriously injured and hospitalized in El Paso. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olgain.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
On Gateway East at Geronimo, an injury accident with El Paso Fire on the scene. I-10 eastbound at Zaragoza, a disabled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. An injury accident from earlier, Piedras at Pershing. An earlier crash on Schuster Avenue at Virginia, slowing traffic on Schuster. Try Arizona Avenue as your alternate. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the CBS 4 Warren Weather Center, I'm forecaster Vania Castillo. We are in for a pretty warm day here in the borderland. We're going to be seeing a high of 81 in El Paso, 78 degrees in Las Cruces. And we are expecting to see some even warmer temperatures for this weekend. Expect temperatures in the mid 80s in El Paso and Las Cruces. So again, some warmer temperatures headed our way, but we are expecting to see a pretty big cool down by Monday, seeing those temperatures dropping back into the 60s.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples has your workspace covered with all the furniture and organizational items you need. And now save 25% on all desks, storage and filing products, chair mats, lighting, decor, and desk accessories when you buy a chair. Explore solutions for your workspace at Staples, the working and learning store.
Politicians have led us down the wrong path. Record inflation and cost of living, unsafe border communities, a war on oil and gas jobs. Enough is enough. Catherine Parker will uphold our Texas values. A successful businesswoman and rancher, Catherine Parker will lower inflation and our cost of living. Catherine Parker will work to permanently lower your property taxes. Catherine Parker will stand up to the radicals who threaten our values and put our families in harm's way. Catherine Parker will secure our border communities and fully fund border security. Catherine Parker will stand with law enforcement and against those who want to defund our police, because our communities deserve to be safe. And Catherine Parker will defend the oil and gas jobs that power our communities. Truth, freedom, prosperity. Vote Catherine Parker for District 74 on November 8th. Political ad paid for by Catherine Parker Campaign.
Fall into a hiring spree with Indeed. Their end-to-end hiring solution makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Sponsor a job and instantly receive a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit. This report is sponsored by Indeed.com.
If you think making false threats is a joke, think again. Any communication threatening students, teachers, and staff at schools or public places is a federal crime that could lock people behind prison doors for up to 5 years.
I'm FBI Deputy Director David Bowditch, making you aware that hoax threats have real consequences. We don't want to see a young person begin their adult lives with a felony record.
Making false threats is not a joke. Think before you post. Visit FBI.gov.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk, and just so many comments that come in that way. And yeah, I'm here for it. We'll take it on. Pop them up as are more relevant or not. Really some interesting points made there about particularly profits and things like that. Someone We have a lot of comments that come in these days, guys. I'm not even lying. But there's at least one that was about, surprised there hasn't been conversation about record profits being a part of inflation. That's definitely come up. Not necessarily in our context here, but I spend a lot of time on the internet, and that's definitely a part of the more national part of the conversation. And yes, there's a point about, with more inflation, that means that they are making with the same margins more money. And yet, I think that honestly is a part of the conversation that isn't brought up that much here. But again, if you're going to just scream at people, say you're wrong, and then explain like why, except for, well, you're bad people, again, not going to have a good time here, because I'm very willing to discuss the issues. That's why we take the phone calls on the line that we do, and I'll delve into it. They're just going to scream at other people about you're wrong and bad and evil. Again, good luck with that. Anyway, back with the phone calls here. Again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have on the line Ben on the east side with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew, befuddled Ben here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's not forget about Guadalupe Hiner for county judge also.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Very important. Also, did I hear right? Was Raul actually giving a convincing argument for school choice?
I suppose that's an interpretation that could be made. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, I was really amazed. One other thing, why should I vote for a bond that's going to take care of all our streets and everything when didn't we just pass a $1.2 trillion infrastructure act?
You're correct. Of course, talking about the last reference there to the federal level one, the Build Back Better, well, those related type of things. There were many different parts within it, including split off parts. So it was a part previously, at the very least, of Build Back Better, if not exactly the full stated agenda. But then, of course, we're referring to there what's on the City of El Paso ballot, the technically three related to bonds, the City of El Paso, Texas bond election, the Proposition A, which is $246.5 million, the lion's share of it, and then $20.8 million for parks and recreation facilities, and the $5.2 million for renewable energy and resource use efficiency. And that's just kind of, that's more than, of course, $250,000 towards that, and then combined with some of the other things on the ballot, including a Canutillo ISD, and I want to say it's San Eli, though closer, though over actually $500 million on the local ballot. So I just will say to your specific question, delineation between the federal ones and the specifically local money. But I mean, the conversation about these and how this actually works is, of course, ongoing.
But why doesn't our city officials go to Veronica Escobar? And she's been our congresswoman for quite a while. She has all these connections with Joe Biden and her good buddy, our vice president. And but for some reason or other, when we need her the most, to maybe come out and give us, out of that $1.2 trillion, couldn't she come up with $250 million for our roads here in El Paso for her constituents? So her constituents didn't have to come out of their pockets for the taxes.
So I get what you're saying in general. Why couldn't they get the, a bigger share of that? Fair is fair in this case. There have been a lot of specific, announcements and releases that her office has done on parts of say, well, we have secured this amount of funding, a lot of piecemeal things, and the whole fighting for the slice of the pie kind of thing. I'm not entirely sure that I would consider it particularly reasonable to have got the whole amount of money out of that here. I haven't done an exhaustive review, I will admit, of all of the projects that have been funded out of that huge chunk of change you're referring to there, but I'm not aware of anyone where it's just dealing with all the roads. I think there's a lot of broadband access actually has been a part of it. I know there has been parts for more recently, Sun Metro, and it's more specific, I guess, is what I'm really getting at here than just kind of here's the money you need for all your infrastructure projects. Have fun. It's okay, give us a specific one and we'll allocate out of the funding for the rest of it, is seemingly to be how it works.
She seems to be able to come up with a lot of money for illegals across the border and everything. Why can't she come up with some money for, to help out her constituents here in El Paso? I mean, 250 million out of the 1.2 trillion. I mean, I don't, maybe 50 million. Just help us out a little bit. But I don't. I mean, what good is she if if she doesn't do anything for her constituents? I mean, we have a big problem with our roads. We have an infrastructure act that gave us all this money. Why can't we get a little of that? Why didn't she come to bat for us? What use is she?
Well, fair enough. Entitled to your opinion on that. So, well, thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
Okay, one last thing. Let's go, Brandon.
All right. You have a good one there.
You take care. Stay well. Stay safe. God bless.
Now you as well. All right. Well, let's get to another call here on the line before we get too far past it. And more points being brought up there on different points being brought up, such as the economy. And Calvin Williams' point I wanted to bring up, comment he made. I've always heard both sides say the first year of a presidency, the prior presidency, I guess, encumbrances policies were responsible for the economy. When does Biden take responsibility for the economy now? I mean, that's always kind of in case it says, I go with the Salvador Dali definition of art. Art is whatever you can get away with. And so policies or the impact thereof are whatever you can get away with. So that's why it's more than a little bit worth discussing in my mind here. Because I think that essentially, if you want to put a finer point on it, that'll essentially be the question of this election: who is responsible for this economy? And do you believe that the management of it will be going forth well? That's kind of a central question, I would say, going to be at least on the minds of a lot of voters. It gets the economy stupid, often works out. Okay, if you want to talk about it even locally, are happy people that have no issues in their lives don't vote? I mean, I'm sorry, that's the kind of bad truth. People who have no reason to be concerned and no reason to think things need to change aren't energized in general. I'm definitely one of those people that I would consider myself happy, but you bet your butt I'm voting, because I also see kind of the longer path of it of, if you want things to continue the way you want to, you better be involved, because just hoping it goes along the way is like, just being on a ship and not being at all worried who the captain is, so to speak. I'm using very broad analogies. But the fact of people being upset, being unhappy, being maybe thinking like, okay, who's to blame here? It may be very basic level thinking, but it also tends to be what drives people to the polls. So if you're ticked off one way or the other, that might be more determining of how this will work out. Let's get to another call. Here we do have Frankie and Messi on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
All right out of the box. I missed to chime in on Friday, and I heard that befuddled then. And I'm not even going to comment about it's Marsh .000 this, 0005 that. Forget about it. What I want to talk about is bewildered Barbara. She gets on and says, oh, have you ever heard the Donnie Dotard do this or the Donnie Dotard do that, meaning on a positive sense? Barbara, let me ask you something. Let me tell you something. Who was it that said that COVID was going to be gone by Easter? Who was it that said that you could take a 100-watt light bulb and jam it up one of your orifice to take care of COVID? Who was the one, meaning the Donnie Dotard, that said, hey, let's drink bleach, let's drink Drano, and that'll take care of it? Why don't you talk about that, Barbara? Huh? Why do you say that? Why don't you mention that part? It's always a positive, negative nonsense that you talk about the Donnie Dotard doofus. That's my opening rant.
On the initial part there about, it just going away, obviously that was proven very, very wrong. And I think was more than a little bit of wishful thinking at that point in time. But also there's a reason that even if there are some kind of underlying concepts there, such as the idea of there being disinfecting wavelengths of light, I don't think the actual use of a light bulb in a posterior was actually discussed, even if there were some unfortunate implications that came from the way it was discussed. This is why I tend to like experts talking about things as opposed to it being filtered through politicians who are not, subject matter experts, because they usually aren't and are interested in the political outcomes of it. The point is that, we've got the situation we have it now, and sure, we can look at some of the origin points of it, but I think a lot of things, and the things that will be coming up for this election will be who has the reins now, and are they doing well or not with it, is really what's going to play with a lot of people's mentality going into this election.
Okay, I got that. Now, my second point, this is very, very serious. And because this has been said, that the more thinking type of Americans are beginning to feel that the Supreme Court is becoming overly political. And we just now had this guy, Clarence Thomas, authorize the stay for that Mrs. what's her name? That guy from South Carolina, Mrs. Lindsay, that he doesn't have to testify in the Georgia thing. Just like clear out of the box, bang, nobody else's business. This cannot be tolerated. You either have law or you don't have law. It's simple as that. And guess what? Befuddled Ben, what Rex said, don't forget it. That's my rant.
All right. Well, thanks for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Have a good one there. I will say this, that based on what some previous guests on the program have said, you can, of course, see there, speaking of specifically, it comes to mind here with Utah political science professor Todd Curry. I can't remember the date offhand, but within the last several months, talking about that we can probably see that this court, given the makeup of it that has been not exactly this way in probably more than a generation, that this will be a more active, not activist, don't bring that phrase on me, but a more active and challenging, maybe established precedent and things than previously was, and why there might be that continued kind of conflict with John Roberts, because essentially most of his tenure to this point was defined by avoiding that. So yes, it may be more visible than it has usually been in, well, the average person's mind, and not those that study this for fun like the weirdness that I am. Let's get to one more call here before we hit that next break and have to close out the program. We have Stephen on the east side with us right now. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Andrew, good afternoon.
Afternoon there. What's on your mind?
So I think Ben had a good point when he was talking about Raul and the school choice thing. I mean, one of the reasons why our schools are perhaps so poor and the education is so poor is because the government is running the schools. Most people get their education publicly, and then, I'm in favor of unions in general, but whenever you have unions for government employees, it ends up turning into something else. And we saw how that worked out with the pandemic and how it affected children because they, in a lot of places, refused to open the schools back up and everything.
And of course, there's more coming out now about, test scores dropping. So, I mean, saying that the extremes, of course, are also often usually the wrongest. Saying that there were no problems with doing that and ignoring the impacts that did happen is just as wrong as saying, well, there shouldn't have been any restrictions taken in my mind, because obviously precautions necessary in a lot of ways and, taking risk analysis into a mind. But to say that therefore nothing bad happened would just be just as wrong in the other direction, because clearly there have been setbacks that, if they're not addressed, are going to continue to fester.
Yeah, I think the real issue that people had a problem with were once the vaccines were available to anybody who wanted them, all the teachers, and if you had children who are high risk, you could get the vaccine. So after that point, I mean, they were still trying to keep things shut down, and they extended the lockdowns way longer than necessary in a lot of places, and especially blue states. And that was also true for a lot of the businesses and everything. And so that goes back to the inflation question. It was, inflation, yes, the other caller was correct that, printing money, that will definitely do it. Overspending, government spending, printing that money will definitely do it. But also decreasing productions of goods and services by keeping things locked down contributed, as well as the policies where Biden essentially campaigned on the idea of shutting down fossil fuels completely, because remember that they've convinced a lot of people that if we shut down fossil fuels completely, then we'll have good weather as opposed to bad weather. And yes, it is true, and all the scientists agree, and I agree too, that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. But the level in which it controls weather is a whole different story. I mean, climate is extremely complicated, and energy going into the oceans and the decadal oscillations in the oceans, and it's very, very complicated. It's not as simple as they make it sound, as if you just lower carbon dioxide, suddenly everyone's going to have good weather. It's not. That's just a myth. Okay. And then, so when it comes to Frankie, my final comment is this is pretty typical for Democrats and the news media on how something will happen. Someone, maybe DeSantis or Trump or whoever it is, will say something and take it out of context and make it sound like something that it wasn't. That's a perfect example. So Trump is in this press conference. He's asking some experts about the conversation that they had that said, oh, you guys are really you're not leaving any stone unturned. We're looking at this type of treatment and that type of treatment. There's betadine pleural lavage where, to clean out the lungs. There was even this Heliolite device that they were looking at in an intubated patient. They were actually considering intubating and introducing a UVC light, which is a safer type of UV light, into the trachea in order to disinfect inside. So, he was asking these experts about that. And of course, there's someone like Frankie, who's part of the cult, the TDS Hunter syndrome cult. They're like, oh, he said they're going to drink bleach. And that's what all the news media talking heads talked about. So that's how those people work. They're not honest brokers of information, and they just spew propaganda. So we're used to that, and we can see right through it.
Fair enough here. Well, thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
No problem.
I will just say this. Please do not drink bleach. I don't care who told you to do it. I don't care what bad soundbite or bad version of a thing you may have heard. Please do not drink bleach. Anyway, got to take that last break. Coming out of the break, too, we got coming up for you on the show and close it out. So stay tuned. We're Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
An injury accident reported Gateway East at Geronimo Drive with El Paso Fire on the scene there. On the intersection of Trans Mountain and Dyer, all traffic lights are stuck on red at that intersection. Try Rushing Drive or Railroad instead as your alternates. I-10 eastbound at Zaragoza, watch for a stalled vehicle on the right shoulder. And road construction has the left lane closed on Donovan Drive, both directions from Red to Thorn. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Discover. Some banks can make it complicated to redeem credit card rewards, but with Discover, you can redeem your rewards for cash in any amount at any time. Talk about amazing. Learn more at discover.com/redeem rewards. Terms apply.
Thanksgiving is more than cranberry sauce. It's about turkey. The 46th annual Turkey Trot. Put your running shoes on and meet us at the corner of St. Vrain in Montana. There's a 5K and a 1-mile fun walk, all to benefit our local YMCA. For registration info, go to elpasoymca.org. That's elpasoymca.org. Or at 6 a.m. on race day, Thanksgiving Day, November 24th. Trot on.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Bad out of time for this show, but I want to tell you what we got coming up for you. Again, more of our interviews on tap, more interviews scheduled so far, but I guess just given the vagaries of scheduling, don't want to make too many pronouncements. But we have lines on some of the county races, some of the major county races anyway, as well as some more of the congressional representation. So stay tuned for that. Got some probably coming up for you tomorrow and a little bit later in the week. Also, of course, some of the city council races that have been more than a little bit of contention. So that and a whole lot more. So I want to thank, in the meantime, until we come back with you on that, thank everyone that has, of course, tuned into the program. The comments, as much as they may be, still what give me life in a lot of ways. And I want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show in whichever way worked best, and you're able to stay safe by doing. We'll, of course, do it tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m., as we do every Monday through Friday. So in the meantime, before we're back on air, want you all to stay safe out there, look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
An injury accident reported Gateway East at Geronimo Drive with El Paso Fire on the scene there. On the intersection of Trans Mountain and Dyer, all traffic lights are stuck on red at that intersection. Try Rushing Drive or Railroad instead as your alternates. I-10 eastbound at Zaragoza, watch for a stalled vehicle on the right shoulder. And road construction has the left lane closed on Donovan Drive, both directions from Red to Thorn. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Stay tuned and stay informed with News Radio 690. KTSM, an iHeart radio station. Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
It's important to know what's going on, especially around the world.
News Radio 690, KTSM.
180 over 111, and I had a stroke. I couldn't speak or walk.
This is high blood pressure. Get back on your plan. Go to loweryourhbp.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour. And always online. At
News on the hour
and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio. I'm Chris Coraggio. Police in St. Louis